Welcome to Just Verdicts with your host, Brendan Lupetin, a podcast dedicated to the pursuit of just verdicts for just cases. Join us for in-depth interviews and discussions of cutting-edge trial strategies that will give you the keys to conquering the courtroom. Produced and powered by LawPods.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Just Verdicts. I'm your host, Brendan Lupetin, and today we're going to be talking with yet another amazing trial lawyer, Kila Baldwin. But before we jump into that, I first want to give a shout out to LawPods, run by Robert Ingalls and company. LawPods produces the show. They record everything. They make it so easy for me to record this. If you are a attorney out there like I was several months ago thinking about doing a podcast, but are worried about all the schlep and problems and editing and all that jazz, seriously consider reaching out to Rob at LawPods because they've been great to work with. Kila, how are you today?
Hi, Brendan. I'm great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to do this. It's a fun breakup from the monotony of being a trial lawyer, so I'm excited to be here.
Amen. That's a big reason why I do this as well. It's like you got to find those things in life that give you energy rather than, sap the energy. And I always find, after talking to awesome trial lawyers like yourself, I'm always kind of more energized afterwards. So thank you for being a part of this process.
Absolutely. No, thank you. And I respect what you do. I've listened to your podcasts and I do enjoy them. It gives you a little something to think about.
Oh, you're the one that's listened. That's awesome. So I had one download.
I'm your one follower.
Well, thank you for being that.
Good stuff.
So, I oftentimes start these a lot in the same place. And I think it's always interesting because I kind of, I think as we get older, take trying to be more mindful and taking stock of life and so forth. And, try to think sometimes because it's easy in this practice to get down when things go hard, but look back on, where have you come from? Okay. And kind of, wow, it's like you've done halfway decent for yourself. And here I am talking to somebody like you and I read your bio and, it's one of those jaw-dropping bios where you're like, damn, I thought I'd done a lot. And then I read about Kila. But I'd love to know, if you could kind of summarize, you were this law student at one point. And, you were one of those nerdy ones because I think you also got an MBA while you were getting a JD. But nevertheless, you're a law student like we all were. How do you get from, law school to, being this, high-flying trial attorney, ripping these, massive verdicts, over the past couple decades? Sorry to date you, but I think we're right about we're right about the same, periods of time that we got into the practice. But yeah, if you could just share with us a little bit about, what your evolution was out of law school. Did you want to be a trial lawyer in law school? Did you know this is what you want to do? Or did you want to do something else and wound up into this for different reasons?
Yeah, so I'll go back, way back, if you'll let me, if you'll entertain me for a second. When I was a little kid, and people never believe me, I was the shyest little girl on the face of the planet. Like my mom would try to introduce me to people and I would stick my head in my armpit and not want to shake people's hand. And, I meet so many people who all the time, daily, law students or lawyers, I knew I wanted to be a law school since I was a little kid. And I was never that person. That is not what I wanted to do. It was the farthest thing from my mind. I wanted to be a doctor. I went to Penn State. I majored in biochemistry. I was on my way to med school. And my dad had a stroke when I was in college. And it sort of devastated me. I was like, I could never be a doctor and deal with telling people that they're sick or that I can't fix it for you. So, I hate to say it, but it was more of a whim that I took the LSATs and I did well. And I got a letter in the mail from Temple. God bless them. I did not come from a family with huge financial means, and they gave me a scholarship. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. I won the Beasley Scholarship. So I decided to go to law school. And for all of you first-year law students out there who are hating law school, I too hated my first year of law school. I was like, this is terrible. This is boring. I don't understand. This makes no sense. But then as you move into your second and third years, you can get outside of that curriculum. And I took the trial advocacy course at Temple, and I fell in love with it. And I just loved the advocacy portion of it and arguing a point for someone else. The compassion and the emotion involved, I just really fell in love with it. So I was fortunate enough out of law school to get involved in a prominent, well-known plaintiff's law firm, Client Inspector, for those of you who don't know them. But it's a large firm. There's close to, I guess when I started, there were close to 25 or 30 lawyers. There's a lot of people there. And, you have to distinguish yourself somehow. And one of the ways you do that as a young lawyer is just working really hard. I remember working almost every Saturday and every Sunday for probably the first 4 years of my career. Not all day, but I'd go in for a couple hours just to clear my head and get stuff and being organized. And then slowly you get recognized for that. And you're asked to participate in trials and try cases. And I was fortunate enough to try a lot of cases with Shane Inspector. Probably the vast majority of my cases have been with him. Tried a few with Tom Klein as well. I've had some success with him as well. But it's just a matter of getting out there and trying it and doing things. You can't be afraid. You got to shut down that inner voice that said you can't go try this case on your own. As a young lawyer, you're given a bunch of bad cases to go try. And I never shied away from that. I lost cases, which no one wants to hear about, but I have lost cases as a young lawyer. But it really thickens your skin, and that's where you learn the most lessons. So you can't be afraid to take on hard cases and take on challenges, which is kind of where I'm at now.
Awesome. There's a lot of that you just said that I'd like to kind of jump
Sure.
to individually. So number one, I can identify so strongly in part with your path because I too was a biochemistry major at Pitt, and I thought I wanted to go to medical school, and then realized that I was thinking that for the totally wrong reasons. It was like my dad's a doctor, I should be a doctor, and always just had that one track mindset. And when I realized I didn't, I was kind of lost for a while. Went to law school, hated first year. But what I'm curious for your perspective is, because I think a lot of people probably had this feeling too, and I certainly did, where I was very self-conscious about public speaking and was very afraid of that. And it sounds like you were too, at least earlier on in your life, that you were very shy and
Yeah.
kind of reserved. Was there some tipping point for you when you got over that? Had you already kind of gotten past that by the time you're throwing yourself in a trial ad class or was that
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. I mean, I would say there's one aha tipping point moment where you're like, that was the day where I decided, or this was it. But I do think, going through high school and going through college, and they make you take public speaking courses and just talking more and putting yourself out there more, that eventually when I got in a trial advocacy class, it was like, you have to do this and you have to learn to, I don't know, quiet that inner voice inside of you that gets you upset. Even to this day, before I give an opening or before I have an argument or before I have to give a CLE, I get nerves. I get, those butterflies in your stomach, and I'm thinking to myself, boy, I have a headache. Maybe I should back out of doing this. Maybe I'm not feeling well today. And you have to kind of, I don't know how to say it, but normalize that that's your body's reaction to you speaking or to you talking, and just realize your body's trying to help you. And like, it's not an unhealthy feeling, it's not an unnatural feeling, but it's also one that you just have to get over. You have to say, I'm going to be nervous. My body's going to tell you you don't want to do this, but once you start doing it, you'll actually be just fine. The second you start talking, you'll be just fine. All those feelings are going to go away, and you have to remind yourself of that all the time. That's not something that's like an old senior lawyer, that feeling goes away. It's still scary. It's just I'm used to the feeling of being a little scared.
And, I think that's a really good point, is stopping, thinking about, identifying like, what is that feeling? Why am I feeling that fear? And recognizing that it's actually a good thing. It's whatever it is. It's adrenaline. It's hyper focus or vigilance that in most instances, so long as, you don't let it get out of control, actually makes you that much better of a speaker or, presenter, or sharpens the mind and so forth. So it's kind of like if you can harness it. But I think sometimes getting to that point is a big obstacle for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think it is. I still see it to this day where people are like shaking, and even when they start speaking, they're shaking and so nervous. And you've really got to, like you said, harness it is a good word. I think it goes back to our old like fight versus flight instincts of way back in the day when we were cave people. That's your body just saying, "Hey, something big's about to happen," and you've got to be able to realize that your body's getting excited, but you have to harness that excitement and bring it into your passion when you speak and your argument.
Yeah. So next part of that, your sort of, transition from law school forward, you sort of find yourself in trial advocacy classes. And so did you know at that point that that was what you wanted to do? I mean, did you want to be, did you have any interest in criminal, or did civil, personal injury, medical malpractice plaintiff side kind of connect to you for some reason?
I just knew I wanted to be in a courtroom. I just knew I wanted to argue a side. When you're over at Temple and you're doing their trial advocacy program, you do criminal cases, you do civil cases, you do plaintiff's work, you do defense work, and they put you on all sides of the bench. And I just knew I wanted to be in a courtroom. And then, so many of us, yeah, and you're so kind to me, I've had a storied career, as they say, and things like that. When I graduated law school, I was just looking for a job. I didn't know what my career was going to be or how it was going to shape. And now that I look in hindsight, everything sort of does happen for a reason. But yeah, now once I started working on the plaintiff side, which I did immediately after law school, and finding out about the civil side and helping these people who have really nowhere else to turn, that's really when I fell in love with it. And that's why I stayed with it for all these years. I can't imagine doing criminal work. I can't imagine being on the defense bar now. I really do enjoy helping people, which is what being on the plaintiff side does.
Working, getting, you are fortunate enough because I know anecdotally it's, especially coming out of school and law school, it's incredibly competitive to have gotten even an associate position at client inspector. And then, that you were given, what I am envious of. And obviously, look, it's everybody's got their pros and cons, but as a straight trial lawyer, the opportunity that you got to start your practice trying cases with, somebody like Shane Inspector and Tom Klein, these guys are, honestly, national, like they're known everywhere, inner circle of advocates, you name it, absolute top of the food chain, and you get to work alongside and learn from them. So, and again, I understand that you couldn't ever answer this question probably in an hour episode or so forth, but as you sit back, can you share with us some of the fundamentals or the basic concepts to trying cases, like key things that are just the bedrock of how to become a good and capable trial lawyer that, you picked up yourself, what, be it from, Shane or Tom or whomever.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the first thing, and it goes back to what I said, is hard work and practice. Trying a big case, if you're trying a big case against a major pharmaceutical company that's going to be weeks in advance, I'm prepping for that 6 to 8 months in advance. If it's a smaller case and it's a medical malpractice and it might only be a 1 week trial, I'm prepping for that 3 months in advance. I think that doing the legwork and the background work is the number one thing that helps you succeed in the courtroom. I don't want to make it like I do nothing, but cases really are won and lost on the facts a lot of time, setting the advocacy aside. And you need to know what those facts are, and you have to have command of that file. So I think one of the fundamentals that has been ingrained in me for years and years and years is putting the time in, and not putting the time in by pulling an all-nighter the night before the trial or 3 nights before the trial. It's putting weeks of sustained hard work in long before the trial ever starts. So when you're in those last minute few days, you're crossing I's and dotting T's, and your speeches are pretty much all memorized, and you're not trying to find documents or looking for exhibits at that point. That's not the position you want to be in. And I think that's a vulnerable one. So I think that's the most important fundamental. I think another really big thing that I have learned through the years is to, and I'll be blunt, you guys can edit me out, is to not take shit from anyone. Defense lawyers, the courtroom, or your clients, or coworkers, or things like that. The litigation world is tough. Fighting with people as an adult is a tough thing to do. It's not pleasant. But you can't let anyone bully you or run over you in any setting, or you're professionally, you will just be unsatisfied. And I think you have to really stand up for yourself and for your clients. And like I said, it's not just with opposing counsel. It's with the court. It's with the co-workers, things like that. I'm a woman, that puts a whole different perspective on things, on the way we're treated, but I do think it's important, and that's a fundamental, that you really are tough. To be an effective trial attorney, you have to be tough, against a whole bunch of host of people on a daily basis.
So I want to talk about, the importance of, women, getting more women being trial lawyers, and, your experience coming up, as a woman getting to where you've gotten to. But I want to go back to what, that point about, not taking shit from people. And I think it's something that, nobody tells you about in law school. And for a long time, you don't even realize the degrees of it, of where you're sort of potentially kind of getting taken advantage of. I love my clients. Well, most of them. Sometimes you have the clients and you both know we're not getting along, but we're in this together. So let's make the best of it. But most of the time, you took that case because you identified with the story. You like these people. You want to fight for them. But whether it's your clients, whether it's judge, whether it's opposing counsel, it seems sometimes like everybody is, I don't want to say like angling on you, but something. I mean, obviously the classic when you start is the defense counsel telling you how bad your case is and the problems with your case and you're going to lose this case and, all these different things. And it starts to, it's insidious and it can get into your mind if you don't realize that that's just, defense 101 on the other side. And then the judges are beating you down. You're being unreasonable for not settling this case. And then sometimes with your clients, it's, you're negotiating with the other side, but you're also negotiating, you're negotiating with your clients sometimes. They're not telling you it's straight with what their bottom line is and so forth. And it can be maddening, but you're right. Like it boils down to you've got to stand your ground pretty much all of those within reason, I think.
Yeah. And you made a good point. You do kind of get it from all sides, and it starts with the defense lawyer who's going to tell you your case sucks and this is terrible. And for years and years, I've had this analogy in my head, true or not, I don't know, but I liken to being a litigator as to being a really good tennis player, and that you are going to have a ball hitting your court, all the time. And it's what you do with that ball that matters. It's not how good the shot was, it's how well you can hit it back. And so I guess I liken it to that in many ways, because a lot of times you're going to get really tough shots thrown at you and really hard things. And you're not going to be able to hit them all back. But as long as you hit most of them and get them over the net back, and you really have to think of it as a long play strategy type of thing, that I think too many people look at litigation, or I hear people, I'm really good at fighting with people, I'm going to be a litigator. And I don't know that that's what litigation is truly about. It's a long-term strategy game. And it really is about being able to accept and understand that you're not going to win everything, know which battles you're going to lose, but what the ultimate victory you want to achieve is.
Which I think goes back to and what you said, before, the not taking crap from people point of a lot of the times hey, your case gets down to the facts. And I think sometimes with this sort of avalanche of trial, videos, podcasts such as this, books, everything, you can almost be led to believe that you can turn any set of facts into this, winning, unbelievable outcome. And the truth is, no, you can't. I mean, there are some cases that you made a bad decision or somebody made a bad decision if you're trying this when these are the facts of the case, and it's really not a winnable case for one reason or another. And there's no magic that you can, conjure up to turn it into something else.
That's such an important lesson, especially for I think young litigators, is that there's no glory in, trying to make something out of nothing. Facts are facts, and we live in the world of facts. And you're right, there's these books, podcasts, movies, CLEs, courses you can take, but if you don't have a good case, you're not going to win that case, 99.9% of the time. And I have had some big verdicts I've done really well. I was fortunate though, because I had those big cases, right? Like I didn't make them out of nothing. It's the circumstances and the facts. And, a lot of people, I just spoke at the National Society of Women Trial Lawyers, and had a lot of, junior young women who wanted to learn how to be a trial lawyer and what's your secret? And I'm like, there kind of isn't a secret. It's about hard work and being comfortable in your own skin. That's really what it's about. I think that the hard work goes hand in hand in liking what you're doing. If you are not someone who has gotten past their shyness and can't speak in front of people, and you don't like writing briefs, and you don't like arguing your points and things like that, then you probably shouldn't be a litigator. You can move on to something else, and there's no shame in that. But, if you want to be a litigator and you love it, then you're willing to put that time in.
So I like that pivot point. So you just spoke, is it the National Association of Women Trial Lawyers?
National Society of Female Trial Lawyers. Okay. National Society of Women Trial Lawyers.
Okay, right. Gotcha. So, I mean, talk to me about that. I actually think I'm, 20-something episodes in, and you are the second woman I've had on the podcast, not intentionally. The first one being Maggie, my awesome associate, and we talked on a couple episodes about a nice verdict we got in September. But I'd love to hear, and you sort of alluded to this earlier, what it's like. I mean, there are times in mine as just, white dude, who's got it pretty good. Where it's, I'm like, should I hang it up? At all different types of my, coming up and so forth. And I know, that women, I have three sisters basically raised by my mom. There's another level of challenge there. And I mean, and I don't know if you can, sum it up in such broad strokes, but, I guess what I'm trying to get at is, can you speak to maybe why there aren't more women trial lawyers, and on the other hand, and I have a lot to say on this too, why
Yeah,
there should be more?
sure. Well, I mean, why there aren't is pretty easy, and I can tell you that just from my own experience and what people have told me. Historically, there just haven't been, and it's really hard when you start at a law firm and you want to be a trial lawyer that there's no other women trying cases, and then you're like, well, I guess I'll do what the other women do, which is this or that, or prep work, or I'll be the background worker. I mean, I never really had a female trial lawyer to this day who I saw as a role model that I could try cases with, that I went to watch try cases. It just didn't exist. There wasn't one out there for me. So in many ways, I emulated men, but then I sort of made it my own. And you have to own your personality. I am a female, so you have to own it. But young lawyers here at my firm, I'm now at Anapol Weiss. I've been here almost 2 years. We are a majority female firm, which I'm very, very proud of.
Is that right?
Yeah, we have majority of our owners are female. All of our partners, which are our non-equity partners, are female, and the majority of our associates are female. So it's really great. It's really awesome. Not something we set out to do intentionally, like we will only hire women, but they were the most qualified candidates who came to us. And a lot of the younger people we see have said, I really want to work with you, and I really just want to try a case with you, Kyla. I've never seen a woman try a case before. I've never seen a woman take lead on a key deposition before. So I think that historically, that's the reason why you don't see it. It's just, when you walk into a room and no one looks like you, it's a little intimidating. And I think a lot of women take a back seat because of that. And women do. We have kids. I have two of my own. It was tough. I came back to work 4 weeks after my daughter and 2 weeks after I had my son because I had trial and
Yeah.
arbitration. You give something up, but you get something in return. My husband retired when I had my second kid. He's a stay-at-home dad. I don't do laundry anymore. My husband does. So, you have to be willing to make those changes. Sometimes I feel like persona non grata when I drop my kids off at school because I'm the only working mom who's not there all the time. But my kids have a pretty good life, and I'm there most of the time. So.
Absolutely. Well, pivot then to, why should there be more, female trial lawyers in particular?
Well, I think that's super important because trial lawyers try cases to juries, and juries are completely mixed: white, black, men, women. And you need to have trial lawyers that look like the jurors, so the jurors will empathize and understand and feel that similarity and that bonding. And sometimes that's something you can't do with words. You can't do it with body language. It's just, oh my gosh, I see another woman. I get what she's saying, or I understand that. I could say as something as simple in a courtroom as a mother, and every woman on that jury is going to go, oh, she knows what it's like. It's just different for women than it is for men. Like, life is just different. And what you want is a juror who can understand where the lawyer is coming from and where the client's coming from. And I think women by our nature are nurturers, maybe a little more passionate or compassionate, however you want to say that. And I think that comes across really well in a courtroom, a lot of times when you're arguing a point. So.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I, preface by just saying that, as white, middle-aged guy, it's extremely, like, it's almost impossible to imagine, like that point you said before, like looking around and there's nobody like you. There's no other women around. I look
Right.
around and it's just a bunch of other white dudes for the most part. You know what I mean?
Right.
But to your point of the trial component of it, and I think this is whether it's working the case up and certainly trying the case. So, I came up and tried a gazillion crappy cases, but I got a ton of trial experience. But I tried them all by myself. Then Greg and I hook up and we start trying cases together, and it's awesome. I just love trying a case with somebody else. There's that collaborative aspect. It's two heads better than one, different viewpoints. And then back in September, for the first time ever, I tried a case with Maggie from my office. First time I
Mhm.
tried a case with a woman, and it was awesome, because she had different unique viewpoints. She had her own, unique way of connecting with the clients. There were certain witnesses that the two of us were sitting there looking and saying, just, it was so obvious that she was the perfect person to cross a certain person or direct a certain person and so forth. And, and she kicked ass, and the judge was trying to like hire her to be a DA of an area afterward. But it just really struck me. Like I've heard other attorneys, obviously like talk about the importance of women in trial law, but then to see it, and there are so many great, well, not so many, there should be more, but there's a handful of really good female trial lawyers in Western PA, and it's like, why aren't there more? But I just, from my perspective, it really, trying a case with Maggie, having that female balance, I thought was tremendous. And you go back to just, hey, half your jury is going to be female most of the time, and male, or vice versa. So
That's awesome, though. But kudos to you for bringing Maggie on and taking her out and giving her that experience. I just think for whatever reason, in the old guard and the old white men, not middle age, it's like, oh, well, the men obviously want to be trial lawyers, and I'm not sure she can handle that or she can do that. And I think it's great to give women opportunities. I try as much as possible to, but I think it's so important to just give them the opportunities and let them get out there, because as you said, it makes a difference, and it's cool. It's almost magical in a courtroom to have a team when you have a man and a woman together. It's really neat.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Which now pivots into, I was reading that, so you've had, been a part of so many amazing verdicts. Like the first time, I ever became aware of you was I was sitting and watching a ton of that Goretzka case back in whenever that was. Like, was that 2009-ish?
That would have to be 2012, because that's when my son was. Yeah.
Okay,
So.
gotcha. And I heard there was this mega case coming up, and I'm a trial nerd. I'm always sitting on these cases, Shane Inspector. And then I see, you sitting there and, you're doing all these exams. I'm like, who the hell is this? What the hell? I'm like, she looks like she's younger than me. I'm like, what am I doing here? So you're a part of that and part of all these other, and then you're well known for a lot of, of what you've done, but I think a lot of people have heard about you through the transvaginal mesh, MDLs, and those types of cases. And I was reading about one, and this is kind of a long windup. You'll find I am often a very long windup on my questions. I promise I don't do this in court. But I saw that was one of the verdicts, or at least one of those verdicts that was like, I don't know if it was like the one that's in the 70s or the one that's in the 50 millions, that was an all-female trial team.
Yeah, so that was the first one where I was lead counsel on, and that was the 57 point, I think it was 0.1 million or something like that. But we had an all-female trial team. It was myself and 2 associates.
So, all right. So now we're in the world of, TVM, transvaginal mesh, MDLs. I'm just a simple individual trial lawyer. I don't know about these, newfangled, MDLs, but seriously, can you kind of, pull back the curtain a little bit? How did you get into that realm of MDLs? What is it like? And then how do you get to the point where you're lead trial lawyer in a mega case like that results in a mega verdict?
Right. So an MDL is a multi-district litigation. So when a large number of people, thousands of people, are injured in the same manner by the same product, same wrongdoer, same defendant, they consolidate those into one federal district court, and that's called the multi-district litigation. And that's where all the cases get filed nationwide. And then whatever court is overseeing the case, then assigns a plaintiff's steering committee, a lead counsel. They have all different committees for, working it up. And you have to get that appointment. I was not involved in any of that for transvaginal mesh. That all happened, but Client Inspector had a large number of transvaginal mesh cases and was not appointed to the lead steering committee, was not involved in the early trial cases. That was all done by the leadership in the MDL. However, typically what happens is after 1 or 2 cases are tried in the MDL, there'll be settlements, and there'll be settlements across the board, and everybody will settle their inventory and nobody has to try them. We were unhappy at what the settlement deal was for the women that we had, given the injuries we saw, and we decided we were going to try some of them. So we brought in co-counsel to try 2 cases, and I tried those along with Shane Inspector and the co-counsel that we brought in who were involved in the MDL. And we had pretty good results. I think we got a $12 million verdict and a $13 million verdict. We did pretty well. And then Shannon said to me, you're a partner here. You've worked really hard on these cases. That was no easy task, just jumping into a litigation. They essentially just said, we need somebody to try these with Shannon who wants to. And I got drafted. For lack of a better word, I got drafted into doing it. And I said, fine, I'd like to try one myself. And I tried it with two other young female lawyers. And that's really when my transvaginal, history or career took off, because I got a $57.1 million verdict. And then I just kept trying them as lead counsel, and I got a 40-something million dollar verdict, an $80 million verdict, I think a 25 or a 22. I don't even, sadly, I don't remember them all anymore. But that was really the start of me being given the opportunity to take on the lead counsel role in anything I really wanted to. And then I got to do some really larger other cases, a neurosurgery case, a medical products case, where I was, lead counsel, which I had been serving as lead counsel up through, but then at trial time, someone else senior would come in. And then that was really my opportunity to start just working cases up and trying them myself.
So back to the point earlier of, facts help bring about good verdicts. I mean, what was the gist of, the why the facts were so good in those transvaginal cases? I mean, clearly, amazing lawyering to, navigate a righteous case through, all the, flaming tires that the defense were likely throwing at you.
Yeah.
But, what were the gist of those facts that led to you being able to, bring about these amazing verdicts?
Yeah. I mean, just so you understand, transvaginal mesh is a mesh that's implanted through a surgery through the vagina to treat either stress urinary incontinence, which is the involuntary leakage of urine, or pelvic organ prolapse. It's when over time your organs start to sag. The mesh is a really bad product. It is defective. It gets stiff inside a woman's vagina. It causes scarring. It erodes into the bladder, into the urethra, into other organs, and then you can't get it taken out. It causes pain. It makes sex painful. It makes urination painful. It interferes with your ability to urinate or take a bowel movement. It's bad, bad stuff. I think the key distinction and where we started to see these really big mega whopper verdicts was the focus on the company's actions. And a large part of that was many, many hours spent rereading and going back through the company documents about what the company knew was wrong with the products and when. And I can tell you, I basically, not that the lawyers in the MDL did a bad job. They served a purpose and they did their work, but I went through and reread thousands and thousands of pages of documents, combing for, the little fine-tooth things. And we ended up finding internal documents where the mesh manufacturers were saying to their scientists, no mesh is the best mesh, and we have to get out of this business, and things like that. Just really damning statements where they knew what all the problems were all along. And those punitive numbers, that drives up your punitive numbers. But when you have conduct like that, it also drives up the damages numbers.
So in that, you're going back, recombing over, what I'm guessing are probably, millions of documents that get produced in these cases. Is it documents that were there all along, or they're basically like threads that you're seeing that then you're pulling on in discovery that are revealing more and more documents? Because, those cases is typically the bellwether, but there's all these other cases. So the discovery is it's kind of almost an ongoing issue, isn't it? In a lot of these situations.
What really happens in a lot of the MDLs is there is a drop of millions of documents into a database. And that database, the MDL will go through it to get their reports or for what they need to try one or two. But they don't go through it any more than that to kind of look really deep, like, hey, look up this word or look up to see what that. And that's really what I did. It's all the same. I didn't have to serve any additional discovery, but I had to go through that database a second and third time and say, hey, I wonder if we search this word with this name, are we going to find that needle in a haystack? It's really just re-looking at everything.
And not to get into a probably wickedly boring discussion of document organization, but in a situation like that, when somebody gets document dumped to that degree, I mean, that's got to get put into some type of system and become at least searchable to some extent, right?
Right. I mean, they had older systems. Yeah, we're just now getting into the AI field, which I think is much better, and using that to search the documents and sort them. But they are searchable by word, by terminology, things like that. It wasn't the greatest system back then. A lot of it was kind of hunting and pecking, for lack of a better word. Like you hunt down, you see what you can find, and then you hunt again. It's a lot simpler now. What's strange and what's still happening is that these pelvic mesh products are still on the market by and in large part. So I'm still signing up women. I have hundreds of cases. And some of the mesh manufacturers came out with new mesh products, like what's called a Y-shaped mesh. So we are now doing some discovery because discovery ended when the MDL settled and closed. So now I'm getting involved in that and serving more discovery requests, trying to find everything. And the way that technology has shifted so much, I'd say over the past 3 to 5 years, is almost unbelievable with the AI that you can use to search and sort documents. It makes it a heck of a lot easier.
So, I mean, there wasn't like somebody sitting there like reviewing, each page of the, millions of documents produced and, oh, this
No,
one is,
you can want to hunch for keywords and then pull like, 100 and look at those 100. And then out of those, you'd say, find me the rest of this email sequence, that kind of thing.
So talk to me about, I don't think I've ever tried a trial longer than 2 weeks.
Okay.
And these cases are weeks and weeks and weeks long.
Yeah.
How do you, from just kind of like the organizational and quarterbacking of it, kind of deciding like who's doing what, scheduling wise. I mean, because you're orchestrating this big, thing, and you've got to have witnesses and different people ready to go on different days. I mean, what is the mindset or process for that? Are you having to somebody get appointed to the oversight of it, or what goes on?
I mean, when I'm in counsel, I like to be the one that oversees it, just because you don't want anybody making a mistake and saying, "Oh, we should have called that expert first." And I mean, typically what I do, I know this sounds silly, but you get a piece of paper and you draw the calendar out, and then I write with pencil so I can erase. But it's almost a daily. I would spend, I'd say, 20 minutes to a half an hour every day just staring at this calendar and like, we're going to put him here, and if he lasts 2 days, then they go there and there, and trying to decide who's going to help with what witnesses so nobody's too overworked, right? So that, you don't have to call 3 witnesses in a row and you're not like exhausted.
Yeah, and you're
Because
doing all of it.
yeah, in a lot of these cases, I mean, it's very true. When you're facing big corporate America, we'll have 3 lawyers, 5 lawyers to a team. They'll have 25 lawyers. You're getting outworked night and day. So you have to make sure that you're spreading your resources well so that nobody's, going to get hospitalized from exhaustion or anything like that.
And when cases are of that size, from an evidentiary perspective, time investment perspective, are you still, I mean, because it sounds like in those cases, what those turned on to, why they changed, like you said, it's the corporate behavior, the corporate knowledge, and that disregard of, we know this is a dangerous, bad product, but we're going to continue with it just because, what we've invested so far.
Right.
And when you find those really inflammatory documents, is in addition to say, just meeting your, meeting the elements of the case, is a lot of the case figuring out like, how do we present it around our best evidence, our best documents at the end of the day? Or is it even,
No, it's absolutely, yeah. I mean, a lot of it is how to get those documents into evidence, even
right?
because defendants fight you tooth and nail on every document, and that's hearsay, and that's not a business record, and so, a lot of it is getting those documents and getting them to your expert, so your expert can say he relied on them, and he has knowledge of them, and getting them in that way. But you want to be able to present them in a comprehensive, meaningful manner. And a lot of that takes that's the months and months that I'm talking about, is having your documents or your evidence and sitting there thinking about like, what's even the logical order to ask this expert about these 200 documents we now need him to talk about. So that's a lot of the advanced planning. I take it for granted now. I've been doing this a long, long time, much like you. And when I was a young lawyer, I would write real detailed outlines, like to the word with commas, and I put the answer and the page in the report could be found with the exhibit. And I've gotten, yeah, I don't want to say good, but I'm experienced enough now that if you just hand me the stack of exhibits that we wanted to get into evidence, as long as I've done the prep work and I know what the case is about, I have no problem not having an outline and just going through those exhibits because I know up here what I want to do. But a lot of that is months and months of me working it out up here. Just because I don't write out the outline, it doesn't mean that I'm not, as I'm reading those exhibits, thinking, what order can I put these in and how would I ask someone? And that's a lot of the background work.
Yeah, on a more sort of simpler perspective, as where I operate, what I found that's, like what you're talking about is, my cross exam outlines would be, the line from the depot with the exact line of like where they said it, the exact, and what you would find after trying a handful of trials was you know, A, impeaching somebody with what they said in their deposition, 9 times out of 10 falls flat. It's just like, lame, boring. It slows everything down. It's not even the point. B, vast majority of the time they just agree with you. Well, didn't you say, and da da da? They're like, oh yeah, or well, not quite, and it's just funny. And then you just get to, there's probably 2 points in this exam that they're likely to try to wiggle or something. And as long as I know where that is easily in the video clip to impeach them or the transcript, I'm good to go now, and it makes for a much better exam because you're flowing. You can be much more freewheeling than if you're like, stuck and latched on to, your written outline.
I think too many people have seen that movie, You Can't Handle the Truth, like these moments in court. And I try to explain, my nieces and nephews will ask me and stuff, and I'm like, court is by and large part very boring. It is not fun, and it's just a matter of getting stuff into evidence. And cross exams are not always, and I think sometimes people try to score big points by having these like, and then I'm going to impeach him about what he said in 1997. And you have to realize those aha moments don't always happen. It's just sort of who makes more sense. And that you're right. If you can have a nice flowing cross exam where you get a bunch of little victories, that's maybe better than one of these. But didn't you say this? And they're like, yeah, fine, I did. But that's not what I'm talking about here. I completely agree with you.
I think what we imagine in our mind of our, you can't handle the truth moment, our Perry Mason moment, is in our mind. And then when it's coming out in real time in the moment, you're like, this isn't that.
Yeah,
this isn't that compelling.
I've seen it a lot with people who rely really heavily on outlines. They're waiting for the answer. And then if they get the answer that they didn't think was coming, they don't know what to do because they're not even listening to the answer. They just wanted to see. And then they're like, they can't pivot, they can't transition, they can't go on to a next subject or related something. They're just stuck. And that's why I really, really tend to stay away from outlines. Some of the younger lawyers I have write them out so that they go through the thought process of it. But then I tell them once you write it out, like now break it down to bullet points that you can use. Like don't get it so verbatim because you're going to get stuck.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. It's the evolution. So you start off, you have to start off with an outline because you don't know what you're doing. Like, am I even on the right track with like the format of like chapters of my cross that I'm going to go through? Yeah, you're on the right format. Okay, I've got the questions. I'm so nervous. I want to, okay, fine. You can have a couple trials. You could probably get through them like that. But then over time, yeah, like you said, make it bullet points. Then get to the point where, okay, there's literally 3 points I want to get from this person. And that's what my whole outline, that's my whole cross. And I don't need anything else. I just have maybe I have a piece of paper with those points on it, but I know what I'm trying to get from this person. And that's your plan. And it's much more cognitively less taxing than I think feeling, stuck to your outline and, oh my God, they didn't say exactly what I thought they would say, this kind of business. But
it also goes back to I read a lot and I read a lot, they say that our attention spans are, becoming less and less because of, in large part, social media, computers, technology, all of that. But I think you have to keep in mind that same thing is true for jurors. And you're going to lose their attention if you go through too much of a long-winded cross where you're crossing about everything under the sun where no one cares. They're never going to get the key points. You really have to keep it simple to keep jurors interested and even listening to you. Otherwise, they're staring at the air conditioning units and, imagining about what they're going to have for lunch and just not paying any attention.
Couldn't agree more. And it's not until you try a bunch of cases and you get in there and you get that, you just have that feeling like, oh boy, this is just deadly boring. And the jury's just like, come on, man or woman, hurry it up. Let's go. This is just, we don't need this.
Yeah.
So you're still doing lots of, transvaginal mesh. What's on your horizon trial wise? I mean, do you foresee yourself, like we were talking about before, it seems like when it rains, it pours with the types of cases that come into our respective offices. I know you're doing a lot of neurosurgery. You've been doing TVM, going to continue to. Are those for the time being the primary focus these days?
We have a lot of TVM cases. I actually had 2 trials this year, and I was really getting excited. I thought I was going to go get a verdict, and they both settled. So there's not much I can do. We got paid. They resolved. I have a host of neurosurgery cases that are lined up for trials. I don't know if I'll be fortunate enough to get into the courtroom on those. They seemingly tend to most often settle out. I do have a lot of birth injury cases lately, and that's sort of a shift in my practice. And I can't say how or why, but for whatever reason, I am very involved with birth injury cases lately. And I've actually been working with I don't know if you even know if you've heard of this, the Black Maternal Women's Health Caucus out in Harrisburg. A bunch of the state reps and senators have put together a caucus to help Black mothers because Black women are 3 times more likely to pass away during childbirth than a white woman.
Yeah,
And
there was a big article in the Times, I think, like a
yeah,
month or two ago, talking about what an epidemic that is.
yeah, and it's really awful. Even just African American children are more likely to be hurt during childbirth. So I've been somewhat of an advocate or helping in that process, and I'm really excited to do that. But I also have a lot of birth injury cases, so I have 2 lined up for fall trials. So I keep like knocking on wood. I can't wait to get back in a courtroom, but right now everything keeps settling. So I can't say which one I'm going to get back into the courtroom first on, but hopefully sometime this year.
It's the curse of being a good trial lawyer who picks good cases. That's
I guess.
hard to get those cases into court.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me ask you this: if you one day have the time, when you're not doing everything that you're doing, and you say, you know what, I'm going to write a book about trial practice, whether it's for any trial lawyer, women trial lawyers, and it's an advice book, and it could be about, the mind state, it could be about, whatever, but it's about how to be a good, overall winning trial lawyer. What is the first chapter or two in your book about?
Yeah. I mean, the first chapter, and this sounds like I guess I'm dating myself or I sound like an old lady, but it's take care of yourself. You are your machine, and no one's going to take care of you for it. And we work in a really, really stressful job. And I've just seen it lately in lawyers throughout the Philadelphia community, which is where I am. People are really struggling with stuff, it just issues out because they're not taking care of themselves. Make sure you eat right, make sure you exercise, watch your health, take care of yourself, where that stress adds up. And I see people who are suffering in that regard. And I think trial lawyers are more likely to suffer from those kind of afflictions, whether it be alcohol, drugs, sleeping outside of their marriage, all kinds of ugly business, if you're not taking care of yourself just because of the stress. And it's a way to relieve the stress. But then I guess hand in hand, the second chapter would be work really hard. You have to work really hard to be a trial lawyer. So that's why the first chapter would be about taking care of yourself.
No, I think that's great. And I think, you hear about the, trial lawyers, the high levels of addiction and depression and so forth. But, in all these trial books that, I'm constantly reading, and you hear about everything. I mean, maybe Rowley mentioned it in Trial by a Human, but nobody else really talks too much. Oh, and I'm sure Rick Friedman did on Becoming a Trial Lawyer. But the importance of, and I'm not even quite sure how to put this sometimes, because I agree with you. You have to work really hard, but I think there's something about keeping perspective on what this is all about. You know what I mean? And you've got a family, I've got a family that I care for very much, and it's, I want to live a long time. I want to live a good quality life. I also think I've got a lot to learn of being, a firm owner and a trial lawyer. And the longer that I can live healthy, then the longer I can get better and improve on that. But it literally starts with, getting good sleep, developing good, not bad habits in life, eating well, taking care of yourself, maintaining your relationships and so forth. Just that simple stuff bleeds into everything else you do. And if you don't, it makes it all so much tougher, and it's already tough to begin with.
Yeah, I did a CLE, gosh, a year or two ago over at one of the local law schools here. And the attorney who was sitting with me up there, one of the students raised their hand and said, "What makes a good trial lawyer?" And this guy was like, "I'm tough as nails and I'm mean to everybody and my family gets mad at me because I'm so tough as nails at home." And I was like, yikes. I just, it's not that I cannot be tough. And I think I have a reputation amongst defense lawyers for being tough, but you got to have that balance and that well rounded life, or you're not going to be well. And then I think you're not well prepared to handle the losses when they come or to deal with the surprises. You have to really be focused on yourself first, and it enables you to do better for your clients and to do better in the courtroom and to do a whole bunch of stuff better.
Yeah, and I think on that point, I mean, you strike me as like one of these lawyers that's never lost. I'm sure you have at some point.
False. I have.
Well, I have lost many, many, many times, and there's gradations of loss. In some cases, like this is a suicide mission, and then
Right.
there were those, and you can get over those ones, and this goes both ways. But then there's those cases that just, like, I know I have a handful of them that I lost, and they were just absolutely soul crushing. And there were times, I found myself very down for a period of time, and you weren't aware of it in the moment, but it bled into other aspects of your life. And as you get along, you're like, but on the flip side, you get a great verdict, and there's that euphoric aspect of it that's very
Yeah,
intoxicating and addictive in its own right. And yeah, I think there's a lot to be said of trying to be somewhat a lot more even keel on both ends. Like don't get so down on the downs, and don't let yourself get too out of control high on the highs. Because like you said, the whole point of this thing, I don't know about you, but I'm not a litigious person in general.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I'm the same way.
I don't like conflict, ironically, outside of what we do. But everything we do otherwise is conflict. But back to that point about the lawyer that, I'm tough as nails and I fight with everybody. I just think that would be too hard to go through life like that. And I also think, sometimes you develop, sometimes our opponents are assholes. They're just assholes. And probably some of them feel that way about me. But most of the time, there was pretty reasonable people on the other side, and made very good relationships with lots of plaintiff lawyers, but lots of defense lawyers too. And I think that's kind of the ideal of like the profession if you're going to be doing it for a long time. That you want. I mean, you have to be firm and fair, and going back to the beginning, don't take bullshit. But right, we gotta maintain our reasonableness also.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you, it struck me over the past, I guess, year or two. I've had a bunch of defense lawyers, some of whom I fought with ferociously when we were litigating their cases, called me to tell me, "Hey, my family member's sick. Would you represent them? Would you take care of them?" And that's maybe the biggest compliment I can ever get because as much as I'm fighting ferociously with somebody, I'm doing it fairly. I'm doing it reasonably. I'm not just doing it for the sake of fighting or for being a jerk. And you got to keep that reasonable demeanor about you because I do think your reputation follows you wherever you go. And you don't want that reputation of being somebody who's unreasonable or unwilling to work with people or anything like that. It'll follow you.
And I think it was Munger or one of the guys from Berkshire Hathaway said something like, it takes a long time to build up a good reputation, but you can blow your reputation very, very quickly. You got to be mindful with it. And I think your point though, that it's not like you're looking to get referrals from defense attorneys, but when you do, that kind of, I think, says something to the effect of like, you're kind of doing things the right way because maybe they didn't even love you, but they respected the way that you were handling yourself and handling your case or representing your client, that they would trust you with, somebody close to them to help out. So last couple questions, or last question, 5-year, 10-year, 15-year, where are you? I'm interviewing you now for
Oh boy.
no, but
uh,
5, 10, 15. What do you think? Are you gonna be the trial lawyer that tries cases and dies with her spurs on, her boots on, or whatever that cowboy
I
saying
do not
is?
want to. I do not want to die in a courtroom. I'll tell you that. Um, 5 years from now, I will still be here at Anapol, and I will still hopefully be trying the heck out of cases. I love trying cases. I'll do it as long as I can. I don't think it's an old man or an old woman's game, though. I think you gotta have a lot of energy and things like that. I guess the 5 to 10 year would be me grooming a crop of lawyers to come up and be. I want a firm with a lot of strong trial lawyers in it. We have a lot of women here. I'd love them to be great trial lawyers. We have men here too, and I'm helping them just as much as I'm helping the women. So 10 years from now, I'll be about 55. So hopefully, I'll be still trying cases. But I'd like to say that I have helped contribute to the society of trial lawyers in the world by help grooming and teaching and educating some of these people how to do it. That would really be my 5 to 10 year goal here.
I think that is the sort of most noble way to. You hear a lot of people talk about legacy, and I don't foresee myself having the capital to buy a law school anytime soon for my legacy. But I think what you said, that committing to helping a handful of people become trial lawyers, learn something from you in that regard, and set them up that they can help other people that need those services in the future when people like us are too old to provide that. I think that's kind of the most noble way to establish a legacy in
Sure.
that regard. So I think that's awesome.
Thanks.
So with that, Kila, we've been going at it for about an hour. And again, I got a ton out of this. It was great to talk to you about everything. I wish you the best of success. For anybody that, has a TVM case or a neurosurgery case or a birth injury case, out your way, not mine.
Yeah.
How can people find you if they want to get a hold of you, or if they, want to know what you're up to?
Sure. I'm at the Anapol Weiss law firm, ANAPOLWEISS. We're obviously on the internet. My email is kbaldwin, KBALDWIN at anapolweiss.com, 215-790-4581.
Awesome. Kila, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Oh, Brendan, thank you so much. And I hopefully will get to see you in person sometime soon. I'll come find you the next time I'm in the Pittsburgh area.
One day in the Grant building now in our sweet dig. So please stop up if you're around.
Excellent. All right. Thank you.
If you enjoy the show, please subscribe to the Just Verdicts podcast on your favorite platform and consider leaving a review. And if you're interested in co-counseling, local counseling, or referring a catastrophic injury case, we'd love to work with you. Call us at 412-281-4100 or visit our attorney referral page at pamedmal.com/refer. Thanks for listening.